type in the chat window? So once again, a very good afternoon to all of you. Before I proceed, I would request my fellow panelists to introduce themselves. Rajan, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Thanks, Arzuma. A warm welcome to each and every one of you for this session today. So my name is Rajan Bhatia. I head the admission counseling at Jamboree Education. So been working in this industry for past 16 plus years now. So having done my bachelor's and master's both from UK, I have been working and helping students on giving them the right options on how to go about their dream of a good study abroad education. And I look forward to a really interactive session with you all. Thank you.
Thanks, Rajan. So Debojyoti, please, thank you for joining us as a panelist. Can you please introduce yourself?
Hi, good evening, everyone. This is Debjyoti Biswas, and I look after the admissions in Jamboree. I'm with Jamboree from the past 2 years, and in total, I have a 3 year of experience in the same industry. I hope to, answer all of your questions as much as I know. I have helped a lot of students to go abroad and do their application process in countries like US, Canada, and UK. So if you have any questions, please reach out to me. Thank you so much, Azuma.
Thanks, Debojyoti and Rajan. So my name is Orzuma. So I have been with Jamboree since 2007, and I have worked with a lot of students, helping them with their application process, helping them decide which universities to go to, etc., etc. I also head the verbal academic team. So I'm closely involved with the team which designs and delivers the content for IELTS Academic. A lot of our students get the necessary scores, whether it's 6.5, 7, 7.5 or 8. And so we have our students, who are able to get those scores. So how many of you are, so this session is only and only for IELTS Academic. So if you're not looking for IELTS Academic, then, then this is not the session for you. We will be discussing only IELTS Academic. So if you're looking for IELTS General, then I would request you to log out. Today's session is only for IELTS Academic. So is there anybody who is not looking for IELTS Academic? All of you are looking for IELTS Academic, right? So if you are looking for IELTS General, then please log out. This session is for IELTS Academic only. All right. So I'll give a couple of seconds for the IELTS General, people who are looking for IELTS General to log out, and then we will start. So just a couple of seconds. So if you are looking for IELTS General, please log out. So in today's session, we'll talk about the IELTS Academic and the various university options. Where can you use the IELTS Academic scores? What kind of scores you should be targeting, etc., etc. What are the some common mistakes or common sections where Indian students do wrong, etc. So we'll discuss a little bit about the IELTS exam, and then what are the university options that you can target with your IELTS score. Something about Jamboree. So we started out in 1993, and we are the oldest and largest study abroad organization in India. So we deliver our courses, both online as well as in classroom. So currently we are in lockdown, but our IELTS classes are going on online. So whether it is IELTS Academic or IELTS General, all our IELTS courses are also delivered online. The way we are talking to you right now, that's how our instructors are dealing with the students and teaching them. So if you want a demo class, if you want a demo IELTS class, please leave your number in the chat window. We will be happy to arrange a demo IELTS class for you, right? So please leave your number, leave your phone number in the chat window if you want a demo IELTS class. It's a free demo IELTS class if you want, right? Okay, so you can leave your number in the chat window and we will arrange it for you. Now, during this session, please keep a couple of things in mind. Use the chat window only when I ask you to, otherwise we will not be able to address your queries. My colleague and fellow panelist Debojyoti will try to answer as many of your questions as possible on the chat, but still I would prefer if you hold on to your questions till the Q&A segment. Right? And when we pause and take questions, use the raise hand feature, and I will give you mic access, right? And then you can ask your question. All right. Now, all the necessary information, whatever information you need about the IELTS exam is there on this official website of IELTS. It's www.ielts.org, right? So you will find the information here. In India, it's conducted by British Council and IDP. Nowadays, IELTS is conducted again both offline and online, right? So offline means it's a paper pencil test, and online means it is conducted on a computer, right? So a lot of our students who are looking for academic IELTS, they prefer to take it online, and a lot of our general students also prefer to take it online. We have questioned a lot of our students, and they think that there is no major difference in the offline and online format. In fact, the online format is more convenient because you get these scores within 4 to 5 days. You get your scores very quickly. So if there is some urgent university deadline that you have to meet, etc., so taking the IELTS exam online will be helpful. Moreover, if you are preparing for any other exam, then they are also online, whether it is a GMAT, GRE, etc., etc. So those are also online. So so the online format is also, it suits everybody. But if you want to take it in paper pencil format, then also no problem, right? Only thing is that when you take it in hard copy, that is in paper pencil format, your scores come in 13 days. When you take it in online format, it comes within 4 days, right? So that is the difference, and that is the advantage also. Okay. So while booking your IELTS exam, so when you have to book your IELTS exam by going to these websites, British Council and IDP. So when you go to this website, so you can choose whether you want the paper pencil IELTS exam or the computer delivered one, right? So the IELTS primarily has 4 sections. All of you know about the 4 sections, I'm sure. Listening, reading, and writing. So these are conducted in in a single sitting. So these 3 sections are conducted in a single sitting. So when you are whether it's an online test or whether it's or there's a paper pencil test, these 4 sections will be conducted together. I mean, these 3 sections. The listening, first you get the listening section, then you get the reading section, and then lastly you get the writing section. So these 3 will be conducted on the same day and in one sitting. That means it's not that in the morning you have listening section, in the evening you have reading section, nothing like that. In one sitting, you will have all these 3 sections. The last section, that is the speaking section, this has to be scheduled separately. So the speaking section is not, whether it is online or offline, does not matter. The speaking section is in person. That means somebody from British Council or IDP will be, a human being interviewer would be sitting in front of you and asking questions. And this is to be scheduled on a different day, right? 1 hour, no, 1 day before or after your test. Can you hear me? Can everybody hear me?
Yes, Orzuma.
As I was telling you, the speaking section is conducted separately for both offline and online. It is the same format. It is in person with an interviewer. So even even though these 3 sections are conducted online for the online test, the speaking section is always conducted as an interview with a human interviewer. The test is scored on a scale of 0 to 9 bands. So each of these sections, listening, reading, writing, for each of these, you will get an individual score of 0 to 9 and then an overall score. So your IELTS score report will have 5 scores. 1 score for listening, 1 for reading, 1 for writing, 1 for speaking, and 1 overall, right? So when you apply to universities, you have to be a little careful. Sometimes some universities have cutoffs for individual sections. They may say that we want 7 bands with but minimum 6 band in each section. So there can be such criteria as well. So when you are applying to universities, please look at the admissions criteria carefully. There may be section wise cutoffs. So Rajan, in your experience, how many universities have you seen where they have section wise cutoffs for the IELTS scores?
So mostly Orzuma, it is more common. So a lot of universities do pay emphasis on the sectional scores. For example, a lot of colleges in Canada play emphasis on that, and some colleges in the UK also place some emphasis on the sectional scores also, apart from the overall band in IELTS. So the sectional scores do play an important role in the application.
Thank you, Rajan. So when you are talking about IELTS, very often I get students who say that, oh, I want a 6 band or I want a 7 band. So, but that is not the right approach. You have to focus on the section-wise scores also, right? Now, of these 4 sections, in our experience, we have seen that, I have seen that students struggle the most in the listening section and the speaking section. Reading and writing, they're still able to meet the cutoff. So that's not that much of a challenge. But a lot of students struggle with the listening and speaking section. So how about you guys? I mean, if you have started preparing for the IELTS, which section do you find the toughest? Yes? Can you type in the chat window? Which section do you find the toughest? The most, according to you, which is the most difficult section? Okay. Okay. All right. According to the Indian students data, students have difficulty meeting the cutoffs for the speaking and listening sections. They are able to meet the cutoffs, the university cutoffs. If universities need a minimum 6.5 or 6 bands in reading and writing, often they are able to meet that, but they face a challenge while meeting the cutoffs for the listening and speaking sections. So when you are preparing for your IELTS exam, make sure that you pay special attention or some extra attention to the listening and speaking sections. So today we'll discuss a little bit about what you can do. So a little bit about the structure of the listening section. So in the listening, the exam starts with the listening section, right? So the listening, so it is about 30 minutes and it has about 40 questions. So as you can see, there are like, you have got less than 1 minute per question. So 30 minutes, and this 30 minutes does not include the time when those tapes are being played, right? So these are 30 minutes that you purely have to answer these questions. So the listening test has 4 main sections. So there are 4 parts. Part 1, section 1, section 2, section 3, section 4. There are 4 sections. Section 1 is the easiest one and section 4 is the most difficult one. So the difficulty level increases, right? So when you are taking the test, make sure that you do not spend too much time on section 1 and section 2, right? Because section 3 and 4 are far more difficult. So each main section, that means each of these 1, 2, 3, 4, each of these sections is further divided into 2 and sometimes 3 subsections. So subsections means will be an audio piece for that. So for if there are four, there will be 4 sections, and within this also there may be 2 or 3 subsections, and there will be an audio clip for each. Right? There will be an audio clip, and then there are questions. Before each of these subsections, you have time to read the questions, and you are advised to write out the answers in the question booklet, right? So so before you start listening to the audio, you get a chance to look at the questions, right? Quickly glance through the questions, and that is a major advantage. So when you are listening to the audio, now this is where a lot of students, they make the mistake. When they are listening to the audio, they just start to take notes randomly. Okay, but that's not what you should be doing. So if somebody is saying hi, hello in the audio, or if they're saying what did you do today, so you don't have to take notes about that, right? Take notes of what you cannot retain in your head. So when you have glanced to the question, so you know what the questions are about. So what you should do is that in the questions, underline those keywords. So if the question is about, let's say, activity on Wednesday, so underline Wednesday, so that when in the tape, when in the audio, when Wednesday comes, that's when you should be paying now additional attention and writing down the answers. Okay, not writing down the answers, taking your notes basically. So since you are able to see the questions beforehand, while you are listening to the audio, you can strategize in such a way that you are paying attention to the segments that are relevant to the questions. You should not be you should not be paying like equal attention throughout the conversation, right? These conversations are of course the lectures are different, but most are conversations, and they are little informal, so you don't have to take notes of each and every sentence. So very often students, the moment the audio starts, they start taking notes. They are not paying attention to what is being spoken, but they are more interested in taking notes. Now that is a very wrong strategy. So when you have the questions, underline some important words in the questions, right? So that when you hear those words in the audio, you pay extra attention, and then you take notes, right? So do this. This is very, very important, right? So if you do that, then you will not make silly errors, and you will be able to manage your time also far better. Now the speaking section. First of all, the speaking section tests your basic comprehension, right? So, and it is in interview format. A human being, a person will be kind of asking you questions, and you will be answering. There are broadly, 3 different segments within the speaking section. First part is on something familiar, like that it's almost like a general introduction, right? Where the interviewer would ask you questions about where you work, or what is your favorite what is your academic background, or what is your family from. So it's more like general introduction, right? So or what are the festivals that you celebrate at home. So it is something going to be very, very very general. So this is where you should relax. It's going to be about you. You are going to know these answers, so relax. Lot of students, they start stammering or fumbling. So don't do that. Have a list of, when you're preparing, have a list of introduction phrases, such as that thank you for your question. Always start with that. So once you have spoken out one sentence, then you will also gain confidence. So said, thank you for your question. Yes, I would love to talk about, so whatever the topic is. So just memorize these 2 lines, so that very often finding the first sentence is the most difficult task. So if you start, just memorize this, that thank you for your question. I would love to talk about my blank. That blank can be whatever question the interviewer is asking. If the interviewer is asking you about your hobbies, then you can say, thank you for your question. I would love to talk about my hobbies. If the interviewer is talking about your family, you should say, thank you for your question. I would love to talk about my family. So no, this is a very, very what I can say, psychological advantage. Once you are able to get out 2 sentences, you will feel far more confident, and you will do better, right? Then the next part is what is usually called the cue card. I'm sure you know this word. It's called cue card section, where the interviewer would put up a card, and on the card there will be topics, right? And this is now going to be something a specific topic. It's not general introduction. And but the topics are very easy. The topics are not current affairs related or anything. It's more like, what is your favorite animal and why is it your favorite animal? Or what is your favorite color, and why is it your favorite color? What is your, so something on those lines. Is going to be something very, very specific. It's not generic, right? So here also, again, you can start with again, memorize 2 introduction sentences, so that once you are able to get those sentences out, and while you are speaking those sentences, you are still thinking and you have time to prepare. In this, you because it is given on a card, right? The interviewer will show you the card, so you have 1 minute to prepare. Now students, when another mistake that they do while during the preparation part is that they write lengthy notes. But don't do that. My recommendation is that you should always just write bullet points, right? So if the question is about what is your favorite animal and why, just write some points. Favorite animal, think about it, maybe tiger. First point, tiger. This is how your preparation should be. Second point is because national animal, right? Third point is, so whenever you have some formats ready. If you are being asked about animals, the first point will be name of the animal. Second, where does the animal live? How do you relate to it personally? What are its strengths? Tiger, maybe because it is so very fearless and powerful, that's why. So make these templates, formats, so that on different subjects. If it's about a sport, then again, first point should be about what's the sport. Second point, what do you like about it? Third point, is there anything in your past where you have played that sport, etc., etc. So when you have topic related templates, right? So, and there's not like there's not like infinite number of topics, by the way. So the topics would be, there will be like 15-20 types of topics. Maybe your favorite food, maybe your favorite book, so those type of topics. And then have the template ready, so that you can then just fit into that template. If you try to memorize for each topic, then you will be in trouble. But you should have a fixed format. For example, if you're if the template for your favorite food can be, number 1, what's your favorite food? Number 2, is it a vegetable or a fruit or a or a dish, right? Maybe it is carrots, or maybe it's mango, maybe it's pasta, right? So what is what type of food is that? Number 3, where did you eat it for the first time? Number 4, what are the different ways that you have eaten it? Like carrots, maybe you like gajar ka halwa, maybe you like carrot cake. If it's like mango, maybe you like mango ice cream, maybe you like to eat mango raw. If it is pasta, maybe you like pasta with white sauce, maybe you like pasta with red sauce, right? So have templates ready. Did you understand what I'm saying? Did you understand this part about template? Having a format ready, rather than preparing for each topic individually, having a format ready. Did you understand? Can you please respond in the chat window if you understood? Okay. All right. So in our classes, of course, we'll give you far more details, obviously. But today, I mean, because I'm just giving you a very brief ideas. Next, the third part of the writing segment, or the reading segment, would be when you, based on second topic only. For example, if your favorite food you mentioned as as mango, let's say, okay. Now the third part would be a little bit more abstract and difficult, question around mango, maybe, and this is where the interviewer would expect you to be able to analyze and put forward your analysis. Again, you get a minute to prepare, right? So if you say that your favorite food is, let's say, mango, then the question should be, okay, so because of environmental issues, the production of mango is going down, day by day. So how do you think it is, impacting you? Or how do you think that overall climate change is impacting, mango production, right? So a little deeper or more difficult question. So here, try to keep your answer short. So because the third part is a little bit more difficult, try to keep your answer short, and always again have a template ready. No matter what your question is, take it should be the plus and minus. That you should say, yes, the climate change, I agree, because of climate change, the production is going down. So therefore we don't get that many varieties as we used to get earlier. So that is definitely not something that I enjoy. But the positive is that I have started to cherish my memories. Now people are more conscious about what they are buying, how they are buying. A lot of people are opting for now organic food, etc., etc., right? So give positives and negatives, right? And then you wrap up your opinion, but keep this part short. This is the most difficult question, right? This is the most difficult part of the speaking section. So keep this short. If you try to give a long answer, there's a high probability that you will make a mistake, that you will stumble, that you will fumble, that you will stammer, right? So please keep this part short, right? Analyze, give positives, negatives, and wrap up. And you will get time to prepare, right? So no problem with that. So so when you are now one trick is that when you get your cue card, right, for the second topic, pick something very easy, right? For example, if you are like going to talk about your favorite food, don't talk about pasta or pizza, because you don't know what kind of, the question may be very difficult. But if you name a vegetable or a fruit, then there's a high probability that you will get some question about pollution and environment and etc., etc. So while you are preparing your answer for the question 2, keep in mind that you are going to get something more difficult about it in the third part. So pick your answers something simpler that will help you in the third segment, right? So so these are some tips, some strategies that you can use while preparing. Another advice is that if you pick a topic, so those of you who are Jamboree students, you have the book, you have the book, or those of you who are not Jamboree students, who are preparing on your own, no matter what book you are using, so pick up a speaking topic, speak it aloud, record yourself on your phone so that you can listen to your recording and correct yourself. Sometimes when you listen to yourself, you are able to find lots of errors. So always record yourself. And speaking section practice should be done aloud, not in your head. Speak out aloud, record yourself on your phone, listen to yourself, and self-correct, right? Okay, so that's all. If you want a free demo, or if you would want us to, so that's all from my end. My colleague Rajan will now take over and let you know what kind of scores you need for different, different universities. But before I hand it over to Rajan, if any of you wants to know more, to take a demo class of how we teach IELTS academic, or if you want a demo of a specific part of the IELTS exam, whether it's reading or writing, etc., please leave your number in the chat window. We will we'll set it up for you, right? So that's all from my end. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Orzuma. And guys, I believe you got a very good, valuable information about the IELTS exam from Orzuma. So are you able to see my screen? Is my screen visible to all of you? Okay, thank you.
Yes, I can see.
Okay. So now what we will look at is how we can look at various how we can use this IELTS academic scores of ours in applying to various countries, or where with which IELTS academic score you can use in applying to various universities and countries as for your study abroad dream. So the various popular study abroad destinations which students look at while applying with the IELTS score are Canada being quite popular, followed with the UK. Then we have Ireland. No, people also want to apply to countries like Australia and New Zealand. So we will now look at what these study abroad destinations have in store for you, and how these universities or these countries have in store in terms of a good study abroad dream for you. So now let us look at Canada first. So if you look at the geography of Canada, so Canada is divided in among 10 provinces. So these are the 10 provinces of Canada. So you have British Columbia, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Ontario, Quebec, Newfoundland, Prince Edward Island, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick. So out of which Ontario and British Columbia are quite popular provinces in Canada, where a lot of international students plan to go for their higher education. So Ontario is like the east coast of Canada. Like in the east coast of US, we associate with New York. So the east coast of Canada is Ontario, and the west coast of Canada is British Columbia. So very popular in terms of the choice among students, where a lot of students want to go. So why Canada? Because the universities in Canada have a worldwide recognition. So they feature in some of the top rankings among the world. So universities in the likes of University of Toronto, York, University of British Columbia, McGill, McMaster, they figure among the top universities around the world, and the quality of education has a global focus. But the most important reason why people look at Canada as a destination is because of the friendly PR policies. So you know what? So the Canada is always opened its doors to immigration since 2014. So which means the working population of Canada is an aging population. So that's why they need a lot of international immigrants to come into that country and take those job opportunities. So a lot of friendly PR policies in Canada, and a lot of support services which exist for international students which are there in Canada. As far as the entry requirements are concerned, at the undergraduate level, minimum entry requirements vary from university to university. So it ranges between 65% to 90%, where some of the top universities like British Columbia, Waterloo, Toronto, they want around 90%. Competitive extracurricular profile in terms of if you have some student council positions, Olympiads, some online courses, or any other extracurricular activity. Both the IELTS or TOEFL is required, but IELTS is more preferred in Canada. Again, the admissions vary by university to university. Academic achievement is the most important criteria when it comes to an education in Canada. So the focus is totally based on your academic performance. Proof of your English proficiency. So if you're applying for a diploma program in Canada, you have to have a 6 band overall with no each band less than 6. And if you're applying for a postgraduate diploma, you have to have a 6.5 overall band with no band less than 6. There are 2 intakes in Canada. One is a January intake and one is a September intake. So in Canada, students generally go for diploma program which are done after class 12th. And then we have the PG diplomas which are done after the bachelor's degree, or you can also opt for studying bachelor's degree in Canada or the master's degrees. As far as the entry requirements are concerned, a lot of colleges in Canada also offer a lot of diplomas and PG diplomas to students which are very economical and highly employable. So as I mentioned, for diplomas, you can do after 10+2 with minimum 55% in 10th and 12th, and IELTS score of 6 band with no band less than 6. And as far as the PG diplomas are concerned, again, you can study with a bachelor's degree of minimum 55% with overall band of 6.5 with no individual band less than 6. As far as the post-study work permit is concerned, so international students also have the opportunity to work up to 3 years in Canada after their education. So if you go for any 1-year program in Canada, so you get a 1-year post-study work permit. And if you go for a 2 years or more than 2 years program in Canada, so you get a 3-year post-study work permit in your education after your education. And which means that once you complete your education and you get your work permit, so once you work for 1 to 1.5 years on that program, so you become eligible to apply for the PR in Canada. So so I have a question from Ankita that the Canadian University does not give admission. So Ankita, if you're talking about undergraduation, so the emphasis of the Canadian universities for giving admission for bachelor's degrees is purely based on academics. Yes, they do place emphasis on extracurricular activities, but the first and foremost criteria for admission is the undergraduate performance. So Avni, if you have a 3-year degree in 3-year bachelor's degree in Canada, so a lot of universities in Canada do prefer a 4-year bachelor's degree. So for admission in masters in Canada, but there are some universities in Canada for MBA which do accept the Indian 3-year bachelor's degrees also. So if you're looking for MBA, so you can apply to some options with the 3-year degrees also. Priya Ranjan, Canada is not a free education like Germany. So Germany is not a Germany is a free education, but Canadian universities do not offer free education to students. So the next country which where a lot of students go is the UK. So as you know, UK is composed of 4 countries, which is Scotland, England, Wales, and Northern Ireland. So the benefits of UK is obviously worldwide recognition. So the degrees and qualifications that you do from the UK higher education institutions, it's recognized around the world because UK has also some of the oldest universities in the world like Oxford, Cambridge, etc. Education costs are quite lower in the UK as compared to other countries because the duration of the bachelor's degree in UK is 3 years and the duration of all the master's degree in UK is of 1-year duration. So one student can save a lot of money in the UK because the degree will generally take less time to take that into consideration. So Devjyoti, as some people are asking questions, so can you answer them on the chat box?
Sure, sir, I'll do that.
Okay, and guys, I would appreciate if you can hold on to your questions till the end because we will be having a Q&A session in the end. And we will take your questions on an individual basis. Thank you. As also an international student in the UK, you are also allowed to work 20 hours per week part-time. And after your studies, you also are eligible to get a 2-year work visa after your studies. And also it's an easy gateway to Europe. So one can reach almost most areas of Europe from UK within a few hours by train or direct flight. And there are close to more than 120 universities to choose from and a lot of broad spectrum of subjects which are available to choose from in the UK. As far as the undergraduate is concerned, again, the admissions are primarily based on 10th and 12th marks. And based on that, you are given conditional offers. And once you present your final marks, so your conditional offer is converted to an unconditional offer. The IELTS exam score expected is 6.5 bands. With no band less than 6. Documents required for undergraduate is just your class 10th and 12th marks. You have to apply through a common application portal for undergrad called the UCAS, where you just have to write a UCAS statement as an SOP. And there is only one letter of recommendation and there is an application fee of £21. As far as the postgraduate education is concerned, UK program duration is 1 year. For high-ranked universities, students need to have around 65 to 70% like King's College, etc. For middle-ranked universities, they need around 55 to 65%. And for low-ranked universities like Coventry, Bedfordshire, University of Middlesex, students need to have a 50% and above in their bachelor's degrees. IELTS requirement for master's program ranges from 6 bands to 6.5 bands with no band less than 5.5. depending on which course and university you are planning to apply to. As far as the application requirements are concerned, you have to have a bachelor's degree, then your IELTS score, you have to write one statement of purpose, 2 letters of recommendation, a passport copy, a resume, and the application form that you have to submit to the UK universities. So that is how the UK education system works. As far as the post-study work permit is concerned, so any student who goes to UK for the higher education from September 2020 onwards, so he or she will be eligible for a 2-year post-study work visa after your education, which means you will get 2-year full-time visa to search jobs and work in the UK. Another country which is gaining a lot of popularity among students is Ireland. So Ireland again is a separate country than UK. So UK, Northern Ireland is a part of UK, but Ireland is a part of Europe. So key industries in Ireland are your life sciences, biopharma, medical devices, IT, software, etc. Ireland has 8 of the world's top 10 IT companies and pharmaceutical companies. Average per capita income of Europe is 28,000 euros, but the average per capita income of Ireland is 36,000 euros. And Ireland is the only country in the Eurozone where English is a language of communication. So that means you don't have to have an additional burden of learning another language like a German or French to study in Ireland. The top 3 sectors in Ireland are: number 1, computer science. So why it is the hub for IT? Because Ireland is the second largest exporters of computers to the world. All the top IT companies like Google, Yahoo, Facebook, Microsoft have their European headquarters in Ireland. So if you are going to Ireland for a computer science or IT, you are kind of a guaranteed job in Ireland, because the FDI of Ireland in computer science is higher than the combined FDI of Brazil, India, China, and Russia. So if any one of you looking for computer science, so Ireland is a very good destination for getting good jobs in a good career. The second industry is your pharma and biotech. So 6 of the top 8 biotech companies have headquarters in Ireland. Ireland is very much known for pharma and biotech. Why? Because 60% of all the medical devices in the world, like your stents, pacemakers, etc., they are manufactured in Ireland and exported to around the world. So Ireland has a lot of scope for courses like in pharmacy, biotechnology, etc. And the third is your electrical and electronic engineering. So a lot of scope for telecommunication, mobile technology, etc. Why Ireland is also a good destination? Why? Because international students can work part-time for 20 hours per week. There are a lot of universities that offer internships. And the most important part, every student in Ireland also gets a 2-year job search visa in Ireland after their studies. And if during this period, a student is able to get a job of euros 30,000 minimum, then he is issued a green card for 2 years. And if during this 2 years he is able to maintain this, then this green card is extended for indefinite period of time. And then after 5 years, you can also get an Irish passport. So that means you become a citizen of Ireland. These are some of the top universities in Ireland, like UCD, Dublin City University, NUI Maynooth, NUI Galway, University College Cork, University of Limerick, and Waterford Institute of Technology. So someone looking for a good career in finance, marketing, management, so Ireland is a very good destination for that student. The next destination is Australia, which has 3rd highest number of international students in the world behind UK and US. Over 1 billion population around the world. We also rely on Australian discoveries like your penicillin, IVF, ultrasound, Wi-Fi. These are all Australian discoveries. Australian qualifications are recognized by employers and leading education institutions around the world. So it's worldwide recognized. Low entry requirements in terms of getting admission in Australia. And student can work up to 90 hours a month or 1350 hours a year on a part-time basis during their studies. Entry requirements of bachelor's degrees. So in Australia, there is a group of 8 universities. So 8 top universities of Australia, like your Melbourne, Monash, Australian National University, University of Western Australia, RMIT, Queensland. So for that, you have to have around 80% in class 12th. And for other universities which are outside group of 8, so you need to have around minimum 65% and above. And even though if a student has less than 60%, then still he can go through the pathway programs in Australia for the bachelor's degrees. So these are some of the group of 8 Australian universities for your reference. So Melbourne, Monash, ANU, University of New South Wales, Western Australia, University of Sydney, Queensland and Adelaide. So these are the top 8 universities of Australia. And in most of the students in Australia, after their studies, they also get a 2-year post-study work permit. But remember, to get that 2-year post-study work permit, your course has to be minimum 92 weeks in duration. So any course less than 92 weeks, you don't get any 2-year post-study work permit, but any course beyond 92 weeks, you are eligible for a 2-year post-study work permit in Australia. And as far as the master's degrees are concerned, so master's degrees, again, the minimum qualification to study a master's degree in Australia is 55% in bachelor's. And for group of 8 universities, you need to have at least a 65 to 70% in your bachelor's degree for getting admission into the master's degree in Australia. The next country also which a lot of students look for is New Zealand. So you get a work permit from day one. You can work for 20 hours per week part-time. High chances of permanent residency because you also get a high chance of getting PR in New Zealand. 1-year minimum job search visa in after your studies. So New Zealand education is based on levels. So student after your 10th, 10 plus 2 can go for a 1-year diploma which is level 5 or a 2-year diploma which is level 6, or they can also go for a 3-year bachelor's degrees. And students after graduation with 6 or 6.5 plus bands in IELTS can also go for a graduate diploma level 7 or a postgraduate diploma which is level 8 or a master's degree which is level 9. And these are some of the universities in New Zealand just for your reference. And apart from that, there are a lot of private colleges and government colleges which do give you admission in New Zealand for your education. So that is what we had in store for you. So if you have any more queries, so you can contact Jamboree India at jamboreeindia.com and we will be more than happy to take your questions now. So you can raise your hand if you have a question and we will give you the chance to speak. Yeah, so Sai Chandra, you can ask your question.
Hi, my name is Sai Chandra Teja.
Yes,
actually, I'm aiming for master's course in Canada. So it's a 16-month course. So I just want to know what is the postgraduate work permit process for that, and after completion of the postgraduate work permit, what are the options available for me to extend it?
So what is the course duration, Sai?
16 months.
So you will get a 16 months work permit.
Okay, yeah.
So so in the after you have worked for at least a year, you can file for your PR there.
Okay, so the question here is, I came to know that the express entry PR takes an average 6 months to be issued.
Yeah.
So, the question is, after 1 year, I will be having only 4 months left of my PGWP validity, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I will be out of the PGWP before I get the, what do you say, that PR.
Before applying for PR, you can also apply. You can ask your employer to extend your work visa.
Okay.
If the employer extends your work visa, he sponsors you. So then obviously you can work for more years and side by side apply for your PR also.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. So we have Vishal. Vishal, you can ask your question.
Hello.
Yeah, Vishal.
Yeah, good evening, sir.
Evening.
Sir, according to you, which country has a better employability rate, Canada or Australia, like after post-graduation completion?
Which program?
Sir, masters.
Masters in what?
Sir, MBA or maybe masters in marketing. Like related to management only.
Okay. See, management, I would say Canada has a good scope because Canada has a lot of good universities in management, and because Australia has very few good universities. So if management is there, so Canada has a better scope because you have a chance to settle there also later on.
Because of the PR facilities.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, sir.
So we have Harman. So Harman, you can ask your question.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, I want admission in Canada University for MBA, and most of the MBA universities are saying that they need 2 years work experience. Is it necessary?
Okay. So I'll have Debjyoti take up this question. So Debjyoti, if you can answer this question.
Sure, sir. So, Harman, there are a lot of universities which also take freshers with the 15 year of education. Do you have a 16 year of education or 15?
Ma'am, actually, I am pursuing BCom third year. I'm in third year, and
Okay.
still I don't want education. I want to complete third year only,
Okay.
so that I don't have any gap in my IELTS exam.
Okay, so there are around 4 or 5 schools where we can help you out with the admissions. You
Okay,
can
ma'am.
drop your name and number, and I shall call you with to discuss the profile once more, and I'll help you out with the options. Right?
Okay. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Any more questions? What you guys can also do is you can also leave your name and number in the chat box, and we will have someone speak to you on an individual basis on your query. So you can also leave your number in the chat box for the same. So any questions from anyone? Maybe you can raise your hand and ask your question. Yangita, please go on.
Hello, sir. I am Ankit, behalf of my sister. I am
Okay.
asking question.
Okay.
Is Australia offering a 4-year bachelor's program in field of computer science?
In most of the bachelor's degrees in Australia are of 3 years duration, Ankit.
They need blind scholarship for completing.
See, Australian universities do not offer a lot of scholarships. So if you look for scholarships, so Australian universities are not that much liberal in giving scholarships to students.
In your opinion, which is the best country for pursuing computer science in undergraduate?
There are two countries which are very good for computer science. One is the US and one is Ireland.
Ireland looking for extracurricular activities.
No, Ireland is totally based on your academic performance.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. We have Gaurav. So Gaurav, you can ask your question.
Yeah, hello, good evening.
Yeah, Gaurav.
Yeah, so I was looking at a master's in cybersecurity, and my options were UK and Ireland. So, which one would you suggest? And do they actually look for work experience before we can get admission?
Jyoti, can you just take up that question, please?
Sure,
Yeah,
sir. So you can do in Ireland as well as in UK both. So schools in Ireland and UK would not require experience. There are schools which also help you with the fresher one. So you can apply to both. So if you can just drop me with your number so
I
that I
have.
can give you options.
Yeah,
Right?
I think I have dropped my number already.
Okay. Can you tell me your name once more?
Gaurav Sham.
Gaurav Sham. Okay. I'll give you a call. Right?
Yeah, yeah. Thank you.
Any more questions, guys? So again, if you don't want to ask your question, you can leave your name and number in the chat box, and we will have someone speak to you on your queries. Okay, so I'm also mentioning my email ID. So if you can, if you have any questions, so feel free to drop your email, and I will be more than happy to answer your questions. So I've dropped my email ID in the chat box, so you can take that and you can come back to me with your questions. So thank you everyone for attending the session, and we wish you all the best. And thanks Deb Jyoti for your time and answering the questions.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Okay, thank you everyone. Bye and take care. And I'm leaving the chat box open for another 2 minutes. So you can leave your numbers and names and we'll get back to you on the same.